Preparing for a strategy consultant interview at Accenture Interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 20 key questions you're likely to face. For each question, you'll see a sample answer, followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. Why do you want to join Accenture Strategy specifically? What attracts me to Accenture Strategy is the ability to connect C-suite strategy with real execution. I like that Accenture does not stop at recommendations. It can bring technology, operations, data, and change capabilities to make the strategy work. My interest is in solving commercial problems where digital and operating model choices matter. That fits my background because I enjoy structured problem solving, but I also care about measurable adoption and business impact. While answering, focus on Accenture's strategy to execution model, technology-led transformation, industry depth, global scale, and why your consulting style fits practical client impact rather than pure boardroom advice. Question 2. Walk me through how you would structure a profitability decline case. I would start by confirming the objective, restore profit, understand root cause, or hit a specific margin target. Then I would break profit into revenue and cost. On revenue, I would test volume, price, mix, customer retention, and channel performance. On costs, I would separate fixed, variable, direct, and overhead costs. I would compare trends versus competitors and market growth, then prioritize the biggest variance. The answer should lead to actions, not just diagnosis. Make sure to cover the profit equation, revenue and cost branches, segmentation by product, customer, channel or geography, external market drivers, and how you would prioritize analysis using hypotheses. Question 3. A client wants to enter a new market. What factors would you analyze before recommending entry? I would assess whether the market is attractive and whether the client has a right to win. First, I would size the market, growth rate, margins, customer segments, and unmet needs. Then I would analyze competitors, entry barriers, regulation, and likely response. Next, I would test the client's capabilities, brand, distribution, technology, and capital requirements. Finally, I would compare entry modes, build, buy, partner, or pilot. A good recommendation balances growth potential with execution risk. In your answer, talk about market attractiveness, competitive intensity, customer needs, entry options, capabilities required, economics, risks, regulatory constraints, and implementation feasibility in an Accenture-style transformation context. Question 4. How would you help a traditional company define a digital transformation strategy? I would not start with technology. I would start with the business outcomes the client wants, such as faster growth, lower cost, better customer experience, or resilience. Then I would map priority customer and employee journeys to identify pain points. After that, I would define the required data, platforms, automation, cloud, or AI capabilities. The final strategy would include a sequenced roadmap, investment case, operating model changes, adoption plan, and metrics to track value realization. Be sure to mention business outcomes first, customer journeys, technology enablers, data, operating model, talent, governance, value roadmap, and the importance of moving from pilots to scalable execution. Question 5. Tell me about a time you solved an ambiguous business problem. In a university consulting project, our client asked why student adoption of a new app was low, but the problem was vague. I first aligned the team on the objective: improve active usage, not just downloads. We segmented users, ran interviews, reviewed usage data, and found onboarding friction was the main issue. I proposed simplifying sign-up and adding targeted reminders. Adoption improved in the pilot group. The lesson was to turn ambiguity into testable hypotheses quickly. While answering, use a clear star structure. Explain how you clarified the objective, broke down ambiguity, gathered evidence, involved stakeholders, made trade-offs, and delivered a measurable result. Question 6. How do you approach hypothesis-driven problem-solving in consulting? Hypothesis-driven problem-solving means starting with a likely answer, then testing it rigorously. I would first clarify the question and define success. Then, I would build a messy issue tree, and form hypotheses about the highest impact drivers. For example, if margins are falling, my initial view might be that price erosion matters more than cost inflation. I would validate with data, update the view, and keep the team focused on the analyses that change the recommendation. Make sure to cover forming an initial answer early, building a messy issue tree, testing with data, revising based on evidence, and using hypotheses to save time without becoming biased. Question 7. A client has many transformation initiatives but limited budget. How would you prioritize them? I would prioritize initiatives using a value versus feasibility lens. First, I would estimate each initiative's financial impact, strategic importance, customer impact, and regulatory urgency. Then I would assess complexity, technology readiness, organizational effort, dependencies, and delivery risk. I would plot initiatives into quick wins, strategic bets, must-dos, and deprioritized items. The final roadmap should sequence work logically, protect scarce resources, and show leadership when benefits are expected. In your answer, talk about value potential, strategic alignment, implementation complexity, risk, time to impact, dependencies, funding constraints, and creating a portfolio view rather than ranking ideas emotionally. Question 8. How would you identify cost reduction opportunities without damaging growth? I would avoid treating cost reduction as a blanket percentage cut. First, I would understand which costs drive competitive advantage and which are non-core or inefficient. Then I would benchmark functions, analyze spend categories, review process complexity, and assess spans, layers, and automation potential. For example, reducing duplicate reporting or manual reconciliations may save cost without hurting customers. The best cost programs free up funds for growth, technology, and better service. Be sure to mention separating waste from capability, benchmarking, activity-based analysis, spans and layers, procurement, automation, operating model redesign, and protecting investments that drive revenue or differentiation. Question 9. What would you consider when designing a new operating model for a client? An operating model translates strategy into how the company actually works. I would start with the strategic priorities: speed, efficiency, customer intimacy, innovation, or control. Then I would define capabilities, organization structure, decision rights, core processes, technology enablement, data flows, and performance metrics. I would also assess talent and location choices, such as shared services or centers of excellence. The design only matters if governance, incentives, and change adoption support it. While answering, focus on strategy alignment, governance, roles and decision rights, processes, technology, data, talent, location model, performance metrics, and the change management required to make it stick. Question 10. How would you estimate the market size for electric vehicle charging in a city? I would use a bottom-up approach. Start with the number of vehicles in the city, estimate the percentage that are EVs, then forecast adoption growth. Next, estimate average miles driven, energy consumption per mile, and the share of charging done publicly versus at home or work. That gives public charging demand in kilowatt hours. I would then translate demand into revenue using average price per kilowatt hour. Finally, I would sanity check against charger capacity and utilization. Make sure to cover top-down or bottom-up estimation, key assumptions, EV adoption, charging frequency, charger utilization, pricing, segmentation between home, workplace, and public charging, and sanity checking results. Question 11. A CEO asks whether to build, buy, or partner for a new technology capability. How would you advise them? I would frame the choice around strategic control and speed. If the capability is core to differentiation and the company can attract talent, building may make sense. If speed is critical and a proven asset exists, buying can accelerate entry but adds integration risk. Partnering works when the capability is important but not proprietary, or when flexibility matters. I would compare economics, time to market, IP control, operating risk, and scalability before recommending a path. In your answer, discuss strategic importance, speed to market, control, cost, integration complexity, talent, intellectual property, scalability, vendor risk, and how the choice affects long-term competitive advantage. Question 12. How would you measure the success of a large transformation program? I would measure success against outcomes, not just project activity. First, I would define a baseline and target benefits: revenue uplift, margin improvement, cost savings, working capital improvement, or service quality. Then I would track operational KPIs, adoption metrics, milestone progress, and customer or employee experience. A transformation can be on time, but still fail if users do not adopt it. Strong governance links initiatives to accountable owners and verified value. Be sure to mention financial outcomes, operational KPIs, customer and employee metrics, adoption, milestone delivery, value tracking governance, baseline definition, and distinguishing activity completion from business impact. Question 13. Tell me about a time you influenced a stakeholder who disagreed with you. In a project team, a senior teammate wanted to present all survey findings, while I believed we needed a sharper executive story. I first asked what they wanted to ensure was not lost, then showed that the audience had only 15 minutes and needed decisions, not detail. I suggested moving supporting data to an appendix. That preserved their work and improved the storyline. We aligned because I focused on the shared goal, not winning the argument. While answering, use a behavioral example showing empathy, data, listening, reframing the issue, building common ground, and achieving alignment without sounding confrontational or overly political. Question 14. How would you communicate a complex analysis to an executive audience? With executives, I would start with the answer and the decision required. Then I would support it with 3 or 4 key insights, not every analysis performed. I would use simple visuals, quantify business impact, and clearly state assumptions. If the analysis is complex, I would put technical detail in the appendix. The goal is to help leaders make a confident decision quickly, while showing that the recommendation is evidence-based and commercially grounded. Make sure to cover starting with the answer, using a clear storyline, focusing on decision-relevant insights, simplifying visuals, stating assumptions, quantifying impact, and preparing for executive challenges. Question 15. A retail client is losing market share to digital competitors. What would you investigate? I would first identify where share is being lost: customer segment, product category, geography, or channel. Then I would compare the client's value proposition against digital competitors on price, convenience, assortment, delivery, personalization, and loyalty. I would also review website conversion, app experience, inventory availability, and fulfillment cost. The solution may involve omni-channel redesign, better data-driven marketing, pricing changes, or supply chain improvements. I would prioritize actions by margin impact and feasibility. In your answer, talk about customer segments, value proposition, pricing, digital experience, assortment, fulfillment, loyalty, data analytics, competitor moves, economics, and options to improve omni-channel performance. Question 16. How should a company think about using generative AI in its business strategy? Generative AI should be treated as a business capability, not a novelty. I would start by identifying high-value use cases across functions, such as customer service, sales content, software development, knowledge management, or finance reporting. Then I would assess data readiness, risk, controls, model governance, and workflow redesign. Human oversight is critical, especially in regulated or customer-facing processes. The strategy should prioritize scalable use cases with clear ROI, adoption plans, and responsible AI guardrails. Be sure to mention starting from use cases, value pools, risk and governance, data readiness, human-in-the-loop design, operating model changes, responsible AI, and scaling beyond isolated pilots. Question 17. How would you analyze synergies in an acquisition case? I would separate synergies into cost and revenue. Cost synergies may come from procurement, overlapping functions, facilities, technology consolidation, or operating efficiencies. Revenue synergies could include cross-selling, new channels, pricing power, or expanded customer access, but they are usually harder to realize. I would estimate timing, implementation cost, probability of capture, and risks such as culture or systems integration. In valuation, synergies matter only if they are credible, measurable, and attributable to the deal. While answering, focus on revenue and cost synergies, timing, one-time integration costs, probability of capture, cultural and systems risks, double counting, and how synergies affect valuation and deal rationale. Question 18. Describe how you would handle a case interview if you realized your initial approach was wrong. If I realized my structure was wrong, I would pause, acknowledge it, and reset, rather than forcing a weak path. I might say, I think my initial framework missed an important driver, so I would like to revise it. Then I would restate the objective and build a better structure. Interviewers care about problem solving under pressure. Recovering well shows judgment, coachability, and the ability to adapt when new information changes the answer. Make sure to cover staying calm, acknowledging the issue, revisiting the objective, reframing the structure, explaining your reasoning, incorporating interviewer cues, and showing coachability rather than defensiveness. Question 19. What is the difference between strategy consulting and implementation consulting, and where does Accenture fit? Strategy consulting focuses on the choices a company should make: where to play, how to win, which capabilities to build, and how to allocate resources. Implementation consulting turns those choices into operating changes, systems, processes, and adoption. Accenture sits across that full spectrum. Its strategy teams work on C-suite priorities, but the firm also has deep technology and operations capabilities. That makes the advice more executable and grounded in what it takes to deliver value. In your answer, explain that strategy defines choices and direction. Implementation executes changes, and Accenture is differentiated by connecting board-level strategy with technology, operations, data, and managed execution. Question 20. Why should we hire you as a strategy consultant at Accenture? You should hire me because I combine structured problem solving with a practical bias for impact. I am comfortable breaking ambiguous questions into drivers, using data to test hypotheses, and communicating recommendations clearly. I also enjoy working in teams and adapting quickly when priorities shift. Accenture appeals to me because strategy is closely connected to technology and execution. I believe I can contribute strong analytical thinking, curiosity, and a client-focused mindset from day one. Be sure to connect your structured thinking, business judgment, teamwork, communication, learning agility, comfort with data and technology, and motivation for client impact to Accenture's consulting environment. If you are still with us, congratulations, you are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.